I could feel it, hovering in the air like a predator. Booker Lennox's family had moved away, and Booker had left the fool's cap behind, the gutless coward. Not that I really blamed him. Booker had worn that cap for almost 5 years, more than enough for anyone. But that left the position of designated victim open, and everyone was waiting to see who would take it. Some were too big, too cute, or just too mean to worry about becoming the next victim. They were the ones most eager to select Booker's replacement. The fool's cap lingered in the air, waiting for someone to mess up, so the next victim could be chosen and everyone could have someone to despise. Naturally, I messed up. Like most dumb decisions, it seemed like a good idea at the time. One of the things my parents taught me when they introduced me to the craft was how to pull strings to make things happen. When people form bonds with others, places, or things, they leave invisible strings linking them. Not all strings are the same, some are bonds of friendship, business, or authority. The fool's cap was like a universal string linking all the kids at Horace Mann to the designated victim. It was just waiting for someone to latch onto. Of course, Cole Peslow, the school bully, and Julia Dunaway, our local queen bee in training, were out in force, trying to help the cap find its new owner. But no worries, right? I could magic my way out of this. All I had to do was pull the right strings around me, keeping the fool's cap far from me. Finding the strings was easy. You could feel the tension in the air, and the strings were bright and clear. Everyone was weighing their options. What if their best friend got chosen? What if the cute girl/guy they were trying to impress was chosen? What if they were the next victim? I found one and twisted it, not enough to put the fool's cap on Sally Emerson or her best friend Maddie Hyatt, but just enough to keep it away from me. Every time I felt the cap drift near, I did the same. I didn't want it landing on anyone, just not on me. But something went wrong. Each time I twisted a cord, the cap floated closer to me. I'll admit, I was still new to this magic thing, especially sorcery. That's what we call the cord twisting. Maybe I messed up. Damn! And it's not like I could ask my mom for help. Which or not, she was still my mom, and you don't drag parents into school drama. The cap got closer. Something wasn't clicking. All through school, I could feel it stalking me. I stopped messing with the cords, thinking if I could just make it through the day, I could use one of Dad's banishing evil potions to get rid of the bad luck. That would have been the smart choice. But as the day dragged on, I felt the cap closing in. I was looking for a string when I bumped into Julia Dunaway. She fell, and I tried to help her up, but she wasn't having it. Calling me a jerk, I felt the fool's cap settle on my head, sealing its hold. I went to school that day a regular kid, and by the end, I was everyone's punching bag. I was, for all intents and purposes, alone. If I'm being honest, maybe it was my fault. My best friends, Benny and Tim, were giving me the cold shoulder. Even my little brother, Trey, was staying away. The little rat. Not that I could blame him, no one wants to be around the kid with the fool's cap, something bad might rub off. The teasing started on the bus, and Cole even followed me off at my stop just to keep messing with me. Luckily, the fool's cap wasn't as strong off school grounds, so I managed to shake him off. I walked the quarter-mile home feeling completely down. It was Friday, but instead of 2 days of freedom, I faced the choice of either being a prisoner in my own house or a target for Cole or anyone else who wanted to make me their punching bag. If these are supposed to be the best years of my life, the future looks like crawling through broken glass. Mom was still working with the local board of education, and Dad was out doing his civil engineering thing, so at least I didn't have to deal with the "what happened at school today?" question. Since she's into health food as part of her witchcraft, my after-school snack was a pear instead of something normal like chips. I trudged up to my room, ready to perfect my brooding skills. I had sucked one thumb down to the nub and was starting on the other when Mom came home and called me down to help with dinner. Yes, help make dinner. Mom has very firm beliefs about parenting, especially after working for the Board of Education, where she sees families that belong on a sitcom. One of her rules is that we all eat together, breakfast and dinner, and either help cook or clean up. And no pre-packaged food, not even the so-called health food. She calls paying for flavored cardboard a waste of money. As we finished dinner, she kept looking at me strangely. Then, looking straight at me, she said, "Ethan, what's that thing on your head?" That hit me out of nowhere. She could see it? It was real enough for her to notice? I always thought the fool's cap was some abstract thing that only kids saw. Well, it's called the fool's cap. You see. The fool's cap? You got stuck with the fool's cap? She pulled me into a tight hug and gave me that mad mom look. Did that useless Reese Aubrey trick you into this? Mom is one of the Walthers, and the Walthers and Aubreys don't exactly get along. My heart lifted. You know what this is? Of course I do. I went to the same schools you did, and that stupid cap's been floating around Millbridge since Lincoln was president. I just wish there was a way to get rid of it. That thing ruined poor Marjorie Hanson before she left for college. Last time I saw her, she was still twitching. You know how to get rid of it? I love having a witch for a mom. Well, if that little punk Reese Aubrey managed to. Mom, as much as I'd love to blame Reese. I explained how I'd tried to use sorcery to get the fool's cap away from me and then ran into Julia Dunaway. You can still get this thing off, can't you? Mom looked disappointed in both me and herself. Sorry, sweetie. From what you've told me, pushing it away just made it stick to you. You have to be careful with sorcery, it's not something you can just mess around with. No, Ethan, you'll have to figure out how to get rid of it yourself. I stopped myself from blaming her. Barely. Then I had an idea. Booker Lennox wore it until his family moved to Worcester. It's a local thing. Maybe if you sent me to a boarding school out of town until it finds someone else to latch onto. Ethan, your father and I are both local bureaucrats. We don't have that kind of money to throw around. What about moving me to Tolbathy, across town? First, I have no reason to move you, even with my position at the board. Second, that's an extra hour's commute each way. Do you think you can handle that? And finally, it might just follow you. Your name's tied to it now. Even if the spiritual part lags behind, the reputation will follow, bringing it with it. So, what am I supposed to do? Mom gave me a weak smile. Well, make the best of it? I heard that back in the 1920s, a girl named Hannah Romney wore the fool's cap from 5th grade through high school, hiding in the library. She read so much that she was the first girl from Millbridge to go to law school. I understand she was also one of the first female litigators in Massachusetts. I shot Mom a frosty glare. I was hoping for some witchy advice, not life wisdom. She sighed and hugged me tighter. You'll have to find your own way, sweetie. Everything else is just noise. That night, I stayed in my room instead of checking out what everyone else in town was doing. I knew if I went out, I'd just become the subject of it. That's what happens when you wear the fool's cap. Of course, I was only wearing it because everyone knew I was. My gaze landed on the full-length mirror on the inside of my closet door. Well, if I'm stuck in here, I might as well make the best of it. I locked the door and thought about casting an aversion spell. But considering my luck with sorcery, I'd probably have Mom and Dad knocking every 5 seconds, asking what I was doing. I went into my closet and opened up my secret stash, hidden in a nook at the top. Inside a cardboard box was a small collection of barely used women's clothes that Mom never noticed. I took off my glasses and put in the contact lenses I'd begged Mom for but rarely wore. I stripped down, then put on a bra with foam inserts, panties, and a silky slip. I sat on my bed, brushing my hair while watching myself in the mirror. Our house sits on land where glamour flows strongly through the earth. Not the superficial kind of glamour you see in magazines, but the original meaning, a magical energy that the Fae used to create illusions. Glamour is born of sunlight and runs through the earth, giving life to everything. Witches like Mom, Dad, me, and a few hundred others can pull glamour up from the ground, running it through our bodies for healing or through our minds to create illusions like the Fae. Mom's side of the family, the Walthers, has a lot of Fae blood, and Dad, though from out of the area, has some Fae connection too, according to Mom. Our house was built to channel glamour, and Dad enchanted the mirror so it would store it like a battery. As I brushed my hair and let my mind wander, I tapped into the glamour in the mirror. My reflection shifted. My hair lengthened, turning from straw-colored to spun gold. It grew from just above my ears to my waist. My eyes changed from gray to deep sapphire blue, large and shiny. My nose turned up, my chin sharpened, my cheeks gained definition, and my lips became a delicate Cupid's bow. My skin cleared, turning smooth and flawless. My neck became graceful, and a fuller figure appeared under the slip. The slip transformed into a silvery satin gown with lace, flowing down to the floor and trailing long bell sleeves. The girl in the mirror had gone from a gangly teenager to a picture-perfect model. I watched for a while, feeling my own hair lengthen with each stroke of my brush. With every stroke, my reflection's transformation mirrored my own body. After 1,000 strokes, the glamour was complete, and I was beautiful. I put down the brush and twirled, feeling elated. I was a girl, a beautiful one. I ran my hands over my body, barely holding back a gasp as I touched my chest. Now, you might be thinking those chests are just foam inserts, right? True, but the thing about glamour is it creates a real illusion, not just a hologram. As long as you accept it as real, the illusion can feel real, real enough to hurt or feel good, like now. I touched myself between my legs, and there was nothing there but a slight mound, so realistic, the illusion was perfect. While I couldn't experience penetration at this stage of my training, I could still enjoy the sensations, and honestly, I was the only guy I knew who understood what a true release felt like. As I basked in the afterglow, I thought about how much I loved being a girl like this, and how frustrating it was that I couldn't go out in public like this. Wait a second. Everyone knows the fool's cap is attached to Dan Winters, a 15-year-old boy. But what if I went out as a girl? No one would recognize me, and I could avoid the constant teasing. Maybe I could make new friends, not as Dan, but as Ethan. At least then I could walk around without worrying about being picked on every 5 minutes. But maintaining a glamour like this takes concentration. I'd need something to keep the image steady while I focused on other things, like writing a program on a computer disk. I can draw. Drawing is one of the things I enjoy most, and it's something I'm really good at, without making things too complicated. I pulled out my sketchpad and pencils and began drawing the girl from the mirror. As I sketched out her shape, I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of how Benny Styles, my backstabbing former best friend, would react if a stunning girl like the one in the mirror even so much as looked at him. Oh, crap! It suddenly hit me that a girl like that would draw attention from every guy in town, and more than a few girls too. She'd be the talk of the town, everyone would want to know who she was. And while Millbridge has a population of 7,000, which is big enough for a little anonymity, it's still small enough that everyone talks. They'd ask me questions, and a witch can't lie. You see, when you can shape reality with your will, it's crucial to align your words with your intentions. If you lie, you throw off that balance, and things can get messy. So, I decided to tone it down a bit, keep the hair shoulder length and blonde instead of moonlight silver, make the eyes a simple blue instead of sparkling sapphires, and keep the face cute but not otherworldly. I'd make her body more of a typical 15-year-old girl than a fashion model. I left the clothing blank so I wouldn't get stuck wearing the same thing all the time, like a cartoon character. When I was done, I looked at my drawing, a very cute girl, one I wouldn't mind meeting in real life. Then I glanced at the mirror, and there she was, looking back at me. I looked down at myself, and there she was again, she was me. I walked around my room, getting a feel for this new form. Not bad at all. It wasn't the ethereal beauty I had imagined earlier, but it was real and human, not a fey illusion. It felt more grounded, more comfortable. Okay, The drawing trick worked, but I couldn't carry a picture of myself around all the time. I needed something to keep it contained. Picture frame? No. Wallet? No. Locket? Yes. I had a locket I'd been meaning to give to Sally Emerson before she started dating Arnie Gannon, don't ask me why. But there had to be more to it than that. I dug out the Book of Rivers, a guide for beginners in wizardry, which is the term for the craft. I had 4 books like it, each covering one of the 5 arts. I also thought I should check the Book of Threads to figure out what I'd done wrong when I tried to avoid the fool's cap earlier. The thing is, I'm supposed to read a few pages from each book every day, but that feels like enough homework already. Do I really need more of it from my parents? I found what I needed, a technique to fix a glamour. It would take some work, and I'd have to consult the Book of Marks for the proper enchantments, but it was doable. My Saturday was pretty much booked with weekend chores, yoga, research, inscribing the runes on the locket, recreating the glamour, and watching Saturday morning cartoons. But at least I could look forward to Sunday. I managed to get everything done. With 2 nosy younger brothers and a house full of witches, it wasn't easy. I found some of Mom's old clothes in the attic, which weren't bad for being a couple of years older than me. I put together an outfit, a white denim blouse with mother-of-pearl buttons, a blue denim skirt that hit just below my knees, and a brocade vest with a cinched back. The outfit called for white leather flats, but my androgynous sneakers worked just fine. That night, after lights out, I set up in my closet to keep things discreet. I called up the glamour from the mirror and infused it into the drawing. I watched the picture girl come to life in every detail, then breathed a little bit of myself into her. Cradling the image in my hands, I transferred her into the locket, closing it to keep her safe. When I snapped out of the spell, the drawing was gone, leaving only a swirl of colored pencil. I opened the locket, and there she was, smiling at me. Considering how well it had worked, pulling this off, without a hitch, felt like a major morale boost. Normally, the excitement of going out as a girl would have kept me up all night. But after such a big spell, I was drained and nearly fell asleep right on the floor. Sunday morning, after church, yes, we go to church, the local Unitarian church, like most of the local witches, I acted like I was heading to my usual Sunday role-playing game in the college quarter. Of course, I didn't mention that the game master was busy that weekend, and the game was called off. I biked up to the college quarter, locked my bike securely, and looked for a place to change. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't she just use glamour to transform her guy clothes into a dress? Well, the thing with glamour is that it can't create something from nothing. The less it alters something, the easier it is to do. Plus, glamour mostly works with your mind tells it what to do, and what you want isn't always what you think you want. So, if I'm wearing guy clothes, I'm still subconsciously accepting that I'm a guy. But if I'm wearing girl clothes, it's easier for me to believe I'm a girl, see? Besides, it's one less thing to go wrong, and with everything else, I need everything to go right. I found the ladies' bathroom in the park and slipped in unnoticed. I ducked into a stall, took off my jeans, and stuffed them into my backpack. I was already wearing panties, so I didn't have to waste time changing them. I pulled on the skirt, sat down, and took my time. After popping in my contact lenses, I grabbed my hairbrush and locket to begin the transformation. I was so focused that I didn't even notice when a mom and her 2 kids came in. She knocked on the stall, and I called out, "Just a minute," in a clear soprano tone. I put the brush away and stepped out of the stall. The mom didn't blink. She just ushered her little one into the stall to take care of business. I flounced out of the restroom, blending in as just another girl enjoying the park on a beautiful spring Sunday. I took a deep breath, feeling the freedom like someone who's just been released from prison. I looked around, what to do? There was so much girl stuff I wanted to do. I wanted to shop, indulge in one of those ridiculously frilly parfaits, or hang out in a bohemian coffee shop while a college student pretended to be a 50s beatnik. But I didn't have much money, and I have a low tolerance for bad poetry, so I settled for the soda Fontainebleau, ordering one with all the works. Afterward, feeling blissfully satisfied, I got out my sketchbook and went to work on the water wheels, like all the other artist wannabes. A bit of context might help here. You see, Millbridge was founded shortly after the American Revolution, right when the Industrial Revolution began. Back then, before they started polluting everything with coal, they used water power to run the factories. Millbridge is nestled in the Berkshire Hills, where the lake spills into the river, prime water power territory, and close to an abundance of wool from the Berkshires. Can something be rife with wool? Anyway, for over a century, the four families, capitalized on purpose, who owned the mills and pretty much everything else in this part of Berkshire County, competed for social supremacy. One way they one-upped each other was by building grander and grander buildings, both public and private. By the 1880s, the main street of Old Town had become downright Baroque. Then, the bottom fell out of the wool industry, and the water-powered mills couldn't keep up with the coal-powered ones. The four families tried to switch to coal, but it just didn't work. As a respected member of the Witchley community, I'll keep the reasons to myself. Millbridge suddenly went from a booming factory town to an overdeveloped farming community with two fully funded and developed colleges, courtesy of some seemingly unbreakable trust funds. Wonder how that happened? By the early 60s, the local Chamber of Commerce decided to enter the ski resort business. They formed the McLeod House Trust, bought out the old McLeod Mansion, and turned it into a ski lodge. While Aspen and Vail don't have anything to worry about, heck, we mostly get turnaways from Catamount over on the New York border, the three ski resorts still do decent business. Add to that Kelling College, Shandy Agricultural and Technical College, 3 summer camps across the lake, and the local farms, and you've got a stable income for the locals. The point of all this background info is that being picturesque is a major part of the town's economy, at least 45% of it. Millbridge is all about that Charles Victorian/Frank Capra small-town America aesthetic. Old Town gets regular facelifts to keep the old buildings looking charming, and they even restored the old trolley system to replace the in-town buses. At Christmas, living here feels like being trapped inside a snow globe, but between April and November, it's a pretty nice place to live. But back to my sketching, one of the real improvements they've made is converting the old mills into electric plants. They may look like relics, but they not only provide us with cheap, clean energy for most of the year, they also offer a prime subject for amateur artists. And this is where I come in. I've lived in Millbridge for almost my entire life, and I've been sketching reasonably well for the past 7 years. But I've never drawn the mills. Why? Because it's a girl thing. You always see girls drawing them, or artsy types from Kelling College using it as an excuse to meet girls. And being a girly boy like me means you can't risk being seen doing girly things. It's just asking for trouble. But now, here I am, a girl for everyone to see, and I've been dying to sketch those mills. I spread a newspaper on the ground to avoid grass stains on my skirt and sat down by the water, eager to scratch this artistic itch. Drawing is like stamp collecting, mountain climbing, or playing role-playing games. If you need it explained to you, you won't get it. I was getting the old mill down on paper, right at that tricky point between finishing touches and overdoing it, when a shadow fell across my pad. I brushed my bangs out of my eyes and looked up. A boy, about my age, was standing over me. I didn't recognize him. It was the wrong season for tourists, so he was probably from the other side of town. He looked at me for a second, and I briefly panicked, wondering if somehow he'd seen through my glamour. Was the river messing with it? Had I touched something made of cold iron by accident? He cleared his throat and said nervously, nice drawing. I ran my fingers through my hair. Thankfully, that part of the glamour was still working fine. Thanks. He fidgeted, his hands in his pockets, clearly trying to decide something. Do you come here often to sketch? Where was this going? Nope. It's my first time drawing the mills. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. I just never saw you around here before. Really? You're from around here? Sort of. I live about a mile from here. Do you go to one of the private schools? Besides the colleges, there are 4 boarding schools in town, set up in the old mansions the 4 families built back when they had money to spare. Me? Heck no! Why would you think that? And what business was it of his anyway? It's just that I've never seen you at Tolbathy, and... Then it hit me, he was trying to pick me up. Oddly enough, I hadn't really thought about boys. For me, being a girl was its own thing, and I didn't really think about relationships. But he was kind of cute. As a guy, the idea of liking another guy never crossed my mind, but as a girl, it felt normal. That's glamour for you. I smiled at him. He was nervous, so I didn't want to make him more uncomfortable. Oh, no, I'm staying with my family here, but I don't go to Tolbathy. One of the quirks of being a witch is that, while we can't lie, we're taught to be clever instead. We can mislead people, just playing off their assumptions without actually lying. To avoid lying, I shifted the topic to something harmless and friendly. Well, I'm almost done with this. Want me to draw your picture? Sure. How do you want me to pose? Oh, don't stand, just sit over there. He sat on the grass, and I started sketching him. By the way, I'm Ethan. What's your name? Griff, short for Griffith, he said, clearly annoyed by the full name. From there, the conversation became easier. As we talked, I got a glimpse of why girls like boys. There's something about having a guy look at you like you're the most beautiful thing in the world. You either love it or hate it, and I loved it. Fortunately for him, I knew how to let him see it. From experience, I knew how hard it could be to talk to a girl and feel like you're speaking into a void, only to hear later that you were getting through but gave up just before she was about to respond. After I finished, Griff and I took a walk and talked. Nothing too close, no hand-holding or anything, but it was nice. It felt good to be there, looking pretty, and having him notice that, while we talked about all sorts of little things. Not the usual stuff I'd talk about with Benny and Tim, but the silly things guys are supposedly too cool to care about. I know he's thinking about trying to get in my pants, behaviorists say about once every 45 seconds, but he's way too cool to be pushy about it. Griff made a comment about the sunset over the Berkshire Hills. Sunset. Crap, I had to get home and help with dinner. I quickly made my excuses and hurried to the trolley lines. Will I see you again? He asked. Probably. You know how it is in a small town, once you meet someone, you keep running into them. Will you give me your number? Sorry, I don't think my parents would appreciate strange boys calling me up, I said, giving him a polite smile. The trolley arrived, and I gave Griff a quick peck on the cheek before hopping on. He waved me off as I settled into my seat, making sure to avoid anything iron. A few older people nearby made comments about young love, which I chose not to dignify with a response. When I got back, Clyde was giving me strange looks. Clyde is Dad's dog, and his familiar. If you're not familiar with the term, a familiar is an animal that a witch or other magic user imbues with a small piece of their soul, making it an extension of them. Clyde's a poodle, but not the frou-frou kind with big poofy hair. He's a manly poodle with a mustache and close-trimmed dark brown fur. He's also a standard poodle, so he stands as tall as a German shepherd and doesn't take any nonsense, except for Mom, of course. He's a smart dog. Anyway, Clyde came over, sniffed me for a while, then either made up his mind about whatever it was or just got bored and went off to terrorize a squirrel. The next day, Monday, the semi-official razziing of the designated victim began. Nobody talked to me except Cole Peslow's crew, and they weren't interested in discussing the World Trade Organization. My books mysteriously kept falling out from under my arm. My pencils disappeared. I kept tripping over my own feet. At lunch, someone accidentally spilled food on me 5 times. In gym, I got a solid idea of what it's like to be a tackling dummy. To make it worse, Mr. Robbins, the gym teacher, picked up on the vibe and went along with it. Like I didn't already hate gym enough. I managed to avoid Cole's crew by the simple tactic of not taking the torture chamber on wheels that the school board calls a bus. I had the outfit I wore in town packed in my backpack and decided to walk downtown. I took $50 from my Christmas Club account and slipped into my Ethan persona as I hit the clothing exchanges. One good thing about living in a college town, students are always broke, so there are plenty of places offering affordable clothes. I picked out a nice striped jersey top and a blue jumper. With my guy clothes stashed in my backpack, I headed to one of Old Town's parks to do my homework. Math. Ugh. I wouldn't have tried holding up an illusion in public while tackling one of Mrs. Morris's word problems without my locket. Just then, a shadow fell across my work. I looked up, half hoping it was Griff, but 3 guys were standing over me. "Hey, babe," one of them said. "Hey," I replied, showcasing my razor-sharp wit. "What's a cute little thing like you doing sitting here all alone?" Now, these guys weren't bad looking. The one with the dark curly hair was even kind of cute, but they gave off a creepy vibe. "I'm waiting for a friend. Just getting some homework done while I wait. How about we keep you company while you wait?" One of them sat down and draped his arm over my shoulder. I tapped my pencil on the paper. "Seriously? Guys don't think this is sexy. This jerk just has to know how obnoxious he's being." I shoved his arm off my shoulder, packed up my homework, and stood up. "Hey, where are you going?" he called after me. I kept walking, refusing to play into his stupid games. "Hey! What? You think you're too good for me or something?" I muttered under my breath, "Asshole, I know bag ladies who are too good for you." I kept walking, but the guys made sure I knew they were following by throwing out a constant stream of snide remarks. I picked up my pace, hoping to reach a store or somewhere safe before they got any bolder. Then I spotted a women's clothing store. Perfect. They couldn't follow me in, and if they waited, the owners would probably let me stay until these jerks gave up or the cops showed up. I quickened my pace, not quite running, and headed for the store. The first guy saw what I was up to and cut me off. "And where do you think you're going?" I tried to think of a way to let him know I wasn't interested in being their punching bag without escalating things too much. Just then, from behind us, I heard, "Actually, I was gonna ask you dweebs the same thing." I turned around, and there was Griff, standing with 3 other guys. They had that "we're not afraid of a fight, but we're not starting one either" stance. "Hey, Ethan, you know these guys?" "No. We just met." I shot a withering look at the group. "Didn't we?" They muttered something about not wanting trouble and shuffled off. I smiled at Griff and said, "Thanks. I was just doing my homework in the park, and they thought I was trolling for sailors." "Why were you doing homework in the park?" "Got little brothers." "Gotcha. Oh, Ethan, this is Stu, Lex, and DJ. Guys, this is Ethan, the girl I met by the mills on Sunday." I flashed them my best cute girl smile. They murmured a quick, "How's it going?" I looped an arm through Griff's and asked, "So, what are you guys doing here?" "Oh, just hanging out. I usually wait until after dinner to do my homework." "So, you in a hurry to finish that?" "Who's ever in a hurry to do that?" "What do you have in mind?" What he had in mind mostly involved the usual early teen hanging out activities. It felt pretty cool to be the girl in the group, with all the genuine guy appreciation coming my way. I steered them toward the soda Fontainebleau and got treated to one of those overly frilly parfaits. The guys ordered more manly desserts. Oh well, their loss. We chatted for a bit, and then she showed up. "Hi, guys. What's going on?" she chirped. "Oh, not much, just hanging out." "Want to join us?" Lex asked, not bothering to check with me first. "Well, that's one demerit for you, buddy." "Sure." She sat next to Griff in the booth, which wasn't as obnoxious as I expected. Griff sat next to me, while Lex, Stu, and DJ sat across from us. "Who's your new friend?" Oh. Griff gestured toward me. Paris, this is Ethan. I smiled and waved over his shoulder. Ethan, this is Paris Lancaster. She goes to Durward. Durward is one of the more high society private schools around, built in one of the Four Families' old mansions. I wondered why she was hanging out with a bunch of Tolbathy kids. We exchanged those polite, sizing each other up smiles, like fencers before a duel. Glamour is a funny thing. Paris was the kind of girl I would have loved to get closer to as a boy: long straight dark hair, a smooth oval face, button nose, peaches and cream skin, large dark eyes, and the beginnings of a killer figure. But as a girl, all she was to me was competition. Just her presence cut into my male admiration. We exchanged a few words over Griff's shoulders, enough to realize, competition, but no real problem. We're different types and will attract different kinds of guys. Don't eat off my plate, and I won't eat off yours. The tension between us faded when it became obvious that Paris was spending most of her time checking out Lex. Reflexively, I checked Lex out too, wondering what Paris saw in him. He was cute enough: broad smile, laughing eyes, milk chocolate complexion, short hair, and a trim, athletic build. If I were into black guys, I might even try to give Paris a run for her money. And considering that black people are pretty rare in Millbridge, and the male-to-female ratio in that group is roughly 7-5, Lex stepping out of his ethnic group didn't seem too strange. Thinking about it, his buddy DJ, also black, might have similar challenges in the dating department. Automatically, I started thinking of any girls I knew who might be a good match for him. But then I remembered I wasn't a full-time girl. Asking around would only cause drama. Maybe wearing the fool's cap was making me dumb. Nah, I've always been this clueless. We chatted around the table for a while, when Lex turned to Paris and asked, "So, is that party at your place still on?" Paris wrinkled her nose. Sort of. My dad switched into full headmaster mode. Griff jumped in to clarify. Her dad's the headmaster at Durward. I made a sympathetic face. And you go to Durward too? Yikes. That's gotta suck. Though it explained why a private school girl was hanging out with public school boys. Paris made a face that said she had stories. Tell me about it. Anyway, Dad laid down the law, arranged the whole layout, even picked which of my CDs I could play. I shrugged. So what? Just make it clear to everyone that it's a bring-your-own-tunes party. He only said which CDs you could play, not what everyone else can bring. That stopped the conversation cold. Lex slapped the table with a beat. Yes, he beamed. Now that's thinking, girl. Griff, you keep an eye on her, you've got a good one. Paris nodded and then announced she needed to go to the restroom. Since it's practically a crime for a girl to go by herself, I naturally had to go with her. While we handled our business, we exchanged a few verbal jabs. I won't bore you with the details, let's just say it was like a fencing match, but in words. We agreed that Lex wasn't making any moves, just being his usual expansive self. Also, I made it clear that I was fine being linked with Griff, and I respected her space in that regard. After a little more back and forth, we decided we were both fine with the situation, and she gave me a de facto invitation to her party, with the caveat that if her dad objected, the blame would fall on me. That seemed fair, and I pressed her for details on the dress code. She said it was casual but still a little dressy, and not to go overboard or her dad would have a fit. After a quick check in the mirror, we agreed we looked like a pair of Betty and Veronica's. We headed back to the booth, where the guys had already made sure Paris was sitting next to Lex and I was next to Griff. How thoughtful. We did the usual chit-chat, and Griff managed to secure my invitation to Paris's party. I didn't know what I would have done without him. Then, I made the obligatory got-to-get-home-to-help with dinner excuse, and Griff walked me to the trolley. I gave him a peck on the cheek for being a gentleman. Funny, I wasn't having any trouble doing that. I would have switched back to Dan mode after getting off the trolley, but I noticed the Peslo crew patrolling the area. I walked halfway home, changed in a wooded area near the house, and walked the rest of the way in jeans. When I got home, I called out the usual "I'm home" and made my way to the kitchen. Then I remembered that I'd only finished half of my homework before the guys had shown up. Great. I'd have to finish it before bedtime, and I really hated going to sleep with algebra on my mind. It gave me these weird dreams where X and Y were conspiring to trap me in a quadratic graph with a crazy hypotenuse. That's when I noticed Boris and Natasha giving me strange looks. Their mom's Russian blue cats, and her familiars, just like Clyde is Dad's. Don't ask me why Mom has two familiars. Anyway, they were giving me those intense, "I'm a cat deciding if I want to play with you" stares. After a while, they hopped off the bookshelf and wound themselves around my ankles, then slinked off in that classic cat I have better things to do way. As I grated the cheese, Mom asked, "I heard you didn't take the bus home, Dan." Yeah. The thought of being trapped in a small, enclosed space with 40 legally immune sociopaths who think of me as a public scratching post just doesn't seem as appealing anymore. Wasn't it you who used to pick on Booker Lennox just as much as anyone else? Yeah, but it was different back then. Now it's you? You make it sound so trivial. What did you do before coming home? I tried to lay low in the park. Did some homework until some guys tried to start something. Oh. What did you do? I kept walking until I ran into some friends. Then those jerks backed off. See? You've still got a few friends. Benny and Tim decided to stand up for you, didn't they? Mom, the guys who helped me are from Tolbathy. I just met them over the weekend. Oh. Well, the worst storm blows somewhat up on the beach, as they say out by the coast. Are you going to bring them over? I don't think so, Mom. They don't know about the fool's cap, and if I brought them over, Trace would spill the beans just to be a pest. Now, dear, your brother wouldn't do anything like that. I shot her and are you kidding? Look. He wouldn't do anything to hurt you, dear. I gave her the "this is not funny" glare. I'll give him direct orders not to say anything. I crossed my arms and added some foot tapping to the glare. Sigh, you're probably right. Well, as long as you keep up with your homework, I don't see any harm in hanging out with a new crowd. Good news! I've been invited to a party on Saturday night at a girl's house. Me, for guys, and a bunch of people I don't know yet. Mom paused in her mushroom slicing for the marinara sauce and gave me a skeptical look. A party? With people we don't know? The girl said her dad would be there, acting as a chaperone or something. She shot me a motherly "I don't know about this" look. It's a Saturday night. No school the next day, I added. She scrunched her face, clearly torn. I don't know, but I guess I can't really say no. Mom, these parties are a normal part of socializing. With all the isolation I'm dealing with thanks to the fool's cap, missing out on this could lead to all kinds of bad coping strategies. Heck, I might end up joining a cult just to get a hug. She gave me an amused "don't quote psychology today at me" look and sighed. All right, but I still want you home by 10:30. I shrugged. Sure, but if I come home at 10:30 in the morning, I might be late for church. She swatted me with a dish towel. For the rest of the week, I focused on two things. First, I was learning how to stay under the radar and spot potential traps. If this keeps up, I'm going to be the most badass thief my RPG group has ever seen. The second project was searching through the attic for something that could pass for a dressy yet simple outfit. A little background here, my parents mixed their witchcraft with a hefty dose of self-sufficiency, you know, all that 1970s homesteading stuff. We've got a compost heap, a methane converter that runs off our septic tank, Dad brews his own beer, and Mom makes her own jams and jellies. They also never throw away clothes just because they're out of fashion. They just stash them in the attic, wrapped up so the moths don't get to them, and wait for fashion to circle back around. Yes, we have an attic. Our house is a product of some old mid-Victorian construction in Old Town, and we've got an attic big enough to house an entire extended family from the third world. The hardest part of searching the attic wasn't finding something that would work, it was sneaking up there without anyone asking questions. Sometimes, having witch parents can really be a pain. Eventually, I pulled together a white skirt and a blue and white striped top, probably from the 70s. The platform shoes were definitely a vintage find, and I had to spend a few dollars on some messy white shoe stain to make them look decent, though you'd only notice if you looked too closely. Now, there are laws to protect banana slugs, laws to protect the rights of the guilty, and even laws to shield minors like me from the smut we crave on the internet. But there's no law to protect kids from borderline psychotic gym teachers. We're in middle school, junior high, for crying out loud, and he's got us playing dodgeball. His version of the game involves letting his jock favorites throw balls at the dweebs, anyone who isn't a jock, until we're all out, then he calls it a basketball practice. They picked off everyone else, leaving me standing alone on the gym floor, and then pelted me with 1,000 balls all at once. Mr. Robbins, you've just made an enemy. Now I just need to figure out the best way to get my revenge. Unlike that Christian turn the other cheek stuff, witches believe in payback. Well, the more mom-like witches say there's a time and place for it, as long as you keep things in perspective and cut it off before it goes too far. But deep down, we all love a good revenge plot. After gym, I limped to the lockers, taking my time to be the last one through the showers, cold water or not. When you're the designated victim, paranoia is your best friend. My former best friend, Benny Stiles, was talking about something. With nothing better to do in a locker room full of half-dressed guys, I listened in. Benny was on his new favorite topic, girls. Of course, Benny knew absolutely nothing about girls, but that never stopped him before. I was out by Old Town, checking out the babes, and I ran into this really fine chick from Durward, Benny said, chuckling like he was some kind of expert. We got to talking, and I could tell she was digging me. She invited me to this party that one of the girls is throwing Saturday night. Should be some pretty choice gash there, if you know what I mean. Good old Benny, subtle as a Mack truck through a plate glass window. The other guys quickly started angling for third-hand invites, but Benny had enough sense not to overcrowd the guest list and piss off his potential hostess. So, Benny was definitely going to the party. I shook off any worry about him blowing my cover and smiled to myself. Mr. Robbins wasn't the only one I had a score to settle with. Benny Stiles at an upscale Durward party with a pissed-off witch? This was going to be good. The CD selection wasn't the only entertainment I'd be bringing to the table on Saturday night. Benny noticed me standing there, grinning to myself. Hey! What do you think you're doing? Me? Nothing. Just standing here. Then Benny ripped into me, just to make sure there were no friendly feelings between him and the designated victim. He called me a loser, a fag, and a retard. I took the hint and headed straight for the showers. I had to deal with a few late towel snaps, but that was the worst of it. Benny's little outburst erased any doubt I had about dealing with him at the party on Saturday. Now, all I had to do was figure out what to wear and how to make sure he paid for it. See, you can't just go around slamming people because they piss you off, you need them to give you the opening. You need them to tie the rope themselves, put their head in the noose, and then, only then, can you kick the chair out from under them. Such are the niceties of vengeance among the wise. Saturday came, and I had to remind Mom that wearing suits and ties to teen parties was for dorks. I managed to get my backpack onto my bike without anyone noticing and pedaled off to town for my first party with a new crowd. I spent nearly an hour trying to get my makeup just right before realizing that I could use glamour to make myself, well, more glamorous. Finally, I was ready. I chained up my bike near the library and walked over to the Soda Fontainebleau to meet Griff. He was there, dressed in khakis and a blue denim shirt. He gave me that look I was starting to really like. I smiled back and said, "Okay, you've been to Paris's parties before. What can I expect?" Well, actually, Paris has only thrown one party before, and that one wasn't exactly approved by her dad, Griff replied. I was starting to like Paris. So, Dadikins is making a major concession by letting her have this one, huh? Sort of. Being headmaster of the school, I think he figures it's better to let her have a few parties, on his terms, than for her to sneak around behind his back. As my mother would say, a man with serious control issues. Well, maybe it won't be too dire. Griff gave me a yeah, right look. Well, a girl can dream, can't she? Paris's dad's house was the old groundskeeper's cottage from the Edmund Durward estate, one of 5 mansions the Durwards built back when the Mills were making a fortune. Like most Gilded Age folks, the Durwards didn't do things halfway. The groundskeeper's house was at least as big as our place, with an additional floor. I'd heard that part of the headmaster's gig was renting out some of the rooms on the 3rd floor to college students. The headmaster's salary was embarrassingly low, but the position was one of the most coveted in town. My mom works for the Board of Education, she knows these things. Paris greeted us at the door, wearing a long-sleeved red satin blouse. Hi! Glad you could make it. Come on in. The house had that air of genteel affluence mixed with genteel poverty that academic types love. Kids were mingling, talking, dancing, sipping the presumably non-spiked punch, and staying well away from the glowering middle-aged man I assumed was Mr. Lancaster himself. I looked around and saw absolutely no one I recognized. On the one hand, that was good, there was no chance of me slipping up and saying something only Dan would know. On the other hand, it could mean this was a gunny crowd. In college towns, there's always a tension between the townies and the gown folks. We just don't run in the same circles. And as with all such divides, there are some people who take it just a little too far. We townies call them goonies, because gowny doesn't have the same sting. But as Griff introduced me around, I noticed enough people who sounded local, even if from the far side of town, that my worries started to ease. No self-respecting goonie would invite a local to their party. Their self-appointed status is the only thing they really have, and they protect it fiercely. Part of fitting in with any group is allowing yourself to blend in, so I mingled and tried to remember as many names as possible. I used an old witch's trick of visualizing their face in my mind and placing something small on their shoulder to help me remember them, like a tiny Eiffel Tower on Paris's shoulder and a pot on Stu's. Griff, who didn't need any reminders of who he was, pulled me out onto the dance floor. You know, dancing is way more fun as a girl than it ever was as a guy. I didn't have to worry about my masculine dignity, and I could just let go. Plus, if I went a little overboard, people were more forgiving of such things when you're a pretty girl, it actually looks good. I got lost in the beat, and before I knew it, I was almost alone on the floor, everyone else just watching me. They cheered me on, and I kept dancing, shaking it for all it was worth. The song wrapped up, and I got a round of applause as Griff put his arm around my waist and led me off the floor. I could really get used to this cute girl role.